On a misty evening, the scene opens as a light rain softly falls, tapping against the quiet sidewalks and empty streets. Dim streetlights cast faint halos on the wet pavement, reflecting a gentle glow. The air is still, carrying a weight of silence, almost as if holding its breath. A sleek car pulls into the nearly empty grocery store parking lot, its headlights cutting through the darkness before they dim. Out steps a tall, fit man with a composed air, his coat pulled tightly against the chill. This is Marcus, a man in his early 40s whose every movement suggests both a purpose and a sense of calm. Despite his powerful build and confident stride, there's a softness to his gaze, a quiet intensity that hints at something more than meets the eye. The rain is steady but not overwhelming, and the muted sound adds a layer of tension, hinting that this routine trip may not end as peacefully as it begins. Marcus is the kind of man who at a glance might seem familiar to some but intimidating to others. His short-cropped hair is flecked with hints of grey, a testament to years of experience and wisdom. Beneath his calm demeanour lies a lifetime of stories, challenges, and accomplishments that only a few close friends and family fully understand. He walks with an understated confidence, a man clearly at ease with himself, his values, and his purpose. Marcus is no ordinary man. He's a CIA operative, one of the very few African-American agents in his division. But he keeps this part of his life carefully tucked away, especially when he's off duty and just trying to enjoy a simple evening away from the pressures of his career. In his neighborhood, he's just another father, husband, and friend. That's the side he holds dear, the side that keeps him grounded even in the face of the darkest moments of his job. Growing up in a small but close-knit community, Marcus learned early about the importance of integrity, resilience, and respect. These values have shaped him as a person, a husband, a father, and a protector. He was raised by parents who were both hard-working and deeply involved in their community, and they instilled in him a sense of duty that would eventually lead him to the CIA. His journey wasn't easy. He faced countless hurdles and had to overcome not only the demands of the job, but also the subtle and sometimes overt biases that come with being a black man in a field where very few looked like him. Despite these challenges, Marcus persevered, driven by his unyielding dedication to serve and protect. Outside of his career, Marcus is a devoted husband to his wife, Sarah, and a loving father to 2 young children. He's the kind of dad who shows up to every school event, every soccer game, and is known to spend his weekends teaching his kids about the importance of kindness, courage, and standing up for what's right. Tonight, Marcus decided to make a quick stop at the grocery store, something he often does to clear his mind after a long day. It's a small ritual, one that offers him a brief respite from the intensity of his work. The familiar hum of fluorescent lights, the gentle rustling of shelves being stocked, and the comforting normalcy of choosing his family's groceries is a welcome change from his usual routine. Little does he know, however, that this seemingly uneventful trip will be far from routine. As Marcus finishes collecting the few items he needs, he heads toward the checkout line, mentally preparing for a relaxing evening at home. But just as he reaches for his wallet, he senses someone approach from behind. He turns to find a uniformed police officer standing uncomfortably close, eyes narrowed, studying him with a look of thinly veiled suspicion. The officer, whose name tag reads Officer John Hanson, is a middle-aged man with a hardened expression, one that speaks of years on the force and a stern approach to his job. Hanson's gaze lingers on Marcus for a moment longer than feels necessary, before he speaks in a tone laced with authority. and distrust. "Sir, I'm going to need to see some identification." Marcus, taken aback, remains composed. He's no stranger to situations requiring restraint and a calm demeanor, but being approached in this way during such an ordinary task catches him off guard. A mix of confusion and discomfort fills the space between them, and Marcus can feel the weight of the officer's judgment bearing down on him. There's no explanation, no context, only an assumption wrapped in Hansen's scrutinizing look. Marcus hesitates briefly before complying, pulling his ID from his wallet and handing it to the officer. Around them, other shoppers have taken notice. Some glance over in curiosity, while others quickly avert their eyes, sensing the tension but wanting no part of it. The initial shock of the interaction begins to settle, replaced by a growing frustration within Marcus. His mind races with questions. Why him? Why now? And on what grounds? But he remains silent, determined not to escalate the situation. The officer takes his ID with a hint of reluctance, as if he's already decided there's something suspicious about Marcus. He scrutinizes the card carefully, turning it over as though he expects to find some discrepancy that will confirm his suspicions. Seconds feel like hours, the silence thickening as Marcus watches Hansen's eyes flick back and forth between the ID and his face. With a short nod, the officer finally hands the ID back, but there's no relief in his expression. Instead, he seems to double down on his judgment, as if Marcus's calmness and cooperation only make him more suspicious. Without warning, Officer Hansen begins questioning him, asking where he lives, what he does for work, and why he's at this grocery store tonight. His tone is cold, his words heavy with underlying accusations. For Marcus, each question feels like a reminder of the assumptions Hansen has already made about him, each one carrying an implication of guilt. As the questions intensify, Marcus can feel a knot forming in his stomach, the frustration building beneath his calm exterior. His responses remain steady and respectful, but inside, he wrestles with a mixture of indignation and disbelief. He knows he's done nothing wrong, that he's simply here to buy groceries, yet Hansen's tone and posture suggest he believes otherwise. And then, as if to solidify the tension, Officer Hansen suddenly decides to search Marcus's grocery bags. Without asking for permission, he begins to rifle through the items, his actions brusque and invasive. Each item Hansen touches feels like a blow, a reminder that his privacy, his dignity, are being disregarded based solely on the officer's preconceived notions. Shoppers nearby glance over, some whispering, others simply watching, as if waiting to see what will happen next. For Marcus, this is more than just an inconvenience. It's a painful reminder of the discrimination he's faced in various forms throughout his life. A flashback to the many times he's been judged not by his character but by his appearance. He can feel a surge of emotions rising within him: anger, frustration, sadness, but he keeps them in check. Years of training in control and composure guiding him through this humiliating ordeal. Inside, however, his thoughts are racing, questioning how this situation came to be, why he was singled out, and how the simple act of grocery shopping has turned into a scene of unwarranted suspicion and invasion of privacy. Throughout the search, Marcus remains still, standing tall despite the humiliation. He watches Officer Hansen's every movement, noticing the slight twitch of his mouth, the hardened set of his jaw, and the way his hands move through the bags as if expecting to uncover some hidden truth. There's a tension in the air that feels almost unbearable, each second stretching into what feels like an eternity. Marcus knows he could reveal his CIA credentials, could end this encounter with a single sentence, but he chooses not to. Instead, he lets the scene play out, determined to keep his composure, to show strength even in the face of this unfair scrutiny. The tension reaches a breaking point as Officer Hansen finally stops searching through Marcus's groceries, his hands lingering over the items as if he's reluctant to admit there's nothing suspicious to find. He looks back at Marcus, a faint flicker of something unreadable crossing his face. Disappointment, maybe, or a brief recognition of having gone too far. But there's no apology, no acknowledgement of the unnecessary escalation, only a curt, half-muttered statement. "You're free to go." It's a dismissal as much as it is permission, an indication that Hansen still sees Marcus as a threat, someone who doesn't quite belong in this place, on this night, in his eyes. For Marcus, hearing those words stirs a complex mix of emotions. Relief washes over him, but it's swiftly followed by a deeper, simmering frustration. He stands there for a moment, processing the abrupt end to the encounter. His heart is pounding, each beat echoing the anger that he's kept in check until now. He can feel his body tense, his muscles clenched, yet he forces himself to remain calm, breathing deeply to keep from responding in anger. The years of discipline and training have taught him this restraint, but he's also learned through experience that an outward show of anger could only escalate things further. This is what it means to walk the line as a black man, he thinks, forced to constantly weigh his responses, his emotions, in ways that others might never understand. As he finally turns to leave, Marcus glances back, his eyes meeting Hansen's for a brief, intense moment. In that split second, there's a silent exchange, a message that speaks louder than words. Marcus's look is one of both resilience and reproach, an unspoken statement that says, "I know exactly what you did, and I'm not the man you assumed me to be." For a moment, he wonders if Hansen feels any regret, any hint of remorse for how he's acted, but there's no indication of it. Hansen's face remains a mask, his posture still tense, a final signal that he has yet to release his deeply ingrained biases. As Marcus walks away, he feels a weight on his chest, a heaviness that settles in, brought on by the cumulative impact of moments like this. Though he's been through similar experiences in the past, this one cuts deeper. A reminder of the vulnerability that even his high-ranking position in the CIA can't shield him from. He has faced danger, has walked into volatile situations around the world. Yet here, in the familiarity of his hometown grocery store, he finds himself singled out, not as a professional, not as a father or husband, but as a suspect. It's a stark, painful reminder that no level of success, no title or badge can protect him from the reality of racial bias. He can't help but wonder how many others go through these same moments. How many people's ordinary lives are interrupted, marred by these unwarranted encounters. A surge of sadness mixes with the anger he feels, a sadness not only for himself, but for his children, for his community, for all those who experience similar injustices. He thinks of his son and daughter, and the lessons he'll have to teach them about the world. Lessons he wishes were unnecessary. He knows he'll have to explain, in a way they can understand, that sometimes people will judge them not by their character, but by their appearance. It's a conversation he dreads, one he hoped they would never have to face. The pain of that realization is almost overwhelming, but he reminds himself that he's endured, that he's learned to navigate these obstacles with resilience and grace. Before he reaches the exit, a few people give him sympathetic nods, silent acknowledgements of the injustice they witnessed. He nods back. appreciative of their quiet support, but it's not enough to erase the sting of the encounter. As he steps out into the rainy night, the cold air feels sharper, more bracing, as if matching the rawness of his emotions. The drizzle has turned to a steady rain, droplets pattering against the asphalt, mirroring the intensity of his inner turmoil. He breathes in deeply, letting the rain cool his face, trying to find a sense of calm in the storm around him. With each step toward his car, Marcus feels a surge of determination rising within him. This encounter, this painful reminder, has sparked something deeper, a desire not just to let the experience go, but to address it, to speak out. He realizes that he has a platform, a voice that carries weight, and that maybe his story could help bring attention to the pervasive issue of racial profiling and bias. He's never one to seek the spotlight, preferring the quiet strength of his work in the shadows. But this moment feels different. The thought crosses his mind that perhaps he's meant to do more than simply endure these moments. Perhaps he's meant to make sure that others, especially the next generation, don't have to face the same reality. As he finally reaches his car, Marcus pauses, taking one last look back at the grocery store, now bathed in the glow of its fluorescent lights and the lingering mist. There's a new resolve within him, a clarity of purpose that cuts through the pain. He knows that this moment, this painful experience, will not be the end of the story. Instead, it will be the start of something bigger, a step toward challenging the systems and assumptions that allow such encounters to happen in the first place. The following day, news of the encounter spreads like wildfire, initially through whispers in the community and then onto social media, where a bystander's quiet recording of the interaction gains traction. It starts with a few reposts, comments of shock and empathy. But soon the story picks up momentum as people resonate with the injustice of what Marcus experienced. Strangers share the clip with captions calling out the blatant racial profiling, tagging news outlets and local officials. In a matter of hours, the video goes viral, sparking a wave of anger, support, and sorrow across the internet. Marcus's face, calm and composed in the face of unfair treatment, becomes the image shared, discussed, and dissected by thousands, perhaps millions. His resilience in that painful moment resonates deeply, embodying a struggle that so many people understand but few have seen on such a personal level. Local media outlets quickly pick up the story, with headlines calling attention to the troubling incident. News anchors recount the scene captured in the footage, highlighting the contrast between Marcus's calm compliance and the officer's harsh and invasive approach. They discuss Marcus's background, revealing that he's a CIA agent, a fact that shocks many viewers who feel the sting of irony, that someone tasked with protecting his country should face suspicion in his own community simply because of his appearance. Commentators and analysts join the conversation, pointing out how easily Marcus could have been misjudged in more ways than one, and how close this encounter could have come to ending in far worse circumstances. Marcus watches as the media coverage grows, the incident no longer a private humiliation, but a public story with national implications. Friends, colleagues, and family members reach out, offering support, expressing disbelief, and sharing their own painful stories of profiling and discrimination. Community leaders, activists, and influencers rally around him, encouraging him to use this moment to speak up. Though he's never been one to seek the limelight, Marcus senses that his voice might hold more weight than he'd realized. He understands that his story, painful as it is can now serve a purpose. If his experience can shed light on the systemic issues that have long plagued people of color, perhaps the pain will not have been in vain. Motivated by the support he receives, Marcus agrees to speak at a local community meeting organized to address issues of racial profiling and police reform. The event draws a large crowd: neighbors, students, parents, activists, and even a few local officials who want to address the public's growing concerns. Standing at the front of the room, Marcus takes a deep breath, allowing himself a moment of vulnerability before sharing his experience. His voice, steady yet filled with emotion, recounts the events of that night: the humiliation, the disbelief, the sadness, and the all-too-familiar feeling of being judged by his appearance before his character. The audience listens, many nodding in shared understanding, some with tears in their eyes, reflecting the pain and frustration of countless similar experiences. Marcus speaks not only of his own encounter, but also of the need for change, for accountability, and for a shift in the way people of color are perceived and treated in everyday life. He urges those in attendance to stand up against these biases, to have the difficult conversations with family, friends, and colleagues, and to support policies that will prevent these encounters from happening in the future. His words resonate deeply, each one striking a chord as he speaks his truth with raw honesty and unwavering conviction. The impact of his speech ripples outward, resonating far beyond the walls of that community meeting. News outlets feature his story, playing clips of his heartfelt address and highlighting the crowd's emotional response. People across the country see his words and the grace with which he handled the injustice. Messages of solidarity pour in, some from those who have endured similar experiences, others from allies who realize they too must help bring change to their communities. Soon, the dialogue around Marcus's story shifts from the specifics of that night to the larger issue of racial profiling. People start calling for reform, demanding that police departments adopt better training, increased accountability, and community-focused approaches. The local police department faces mounting pressure, and though Officer Hansen remains silent on the matter, his superiors cannot ignore the outcry. To address the concerns, the department holds a press conference where they promise to review the incident and to work on implementing new policies that focus on bias training and better community relations. They announce plans to introduce mandatory sensitivity training for all officers, emphasizing the need to recognize and eliminate implicit biases. This marks a significant step for the community, a sign that Marcus's experience has sparked a real and much-needed change. Public officials release statements of support, many thanking Marcus for his courage and pledging to prioritize these reforms. As the days turn into weeks, Marcus's story continues to inspire discussions in communities across the nation. Social media is filled with posts tagging his story, each one calling for changes within local police departments and supporting movements that seek to address racial injustice. Hashtags emerge, uniting people under a common cause, creating a network of individuals who believe in the potential for a more just society. Marcus's experience becomes a touchstone, a symbol of the broader struggles faced by so many people of color, and a reminder that even small encounters carry the weight of historical bias and prejudice. For Marcus, the fallout is both painful and healing. Though he would never have wished for this experience, he can see the impact it has had, not only within his community, but across the country. Strangers send him messages, thanking him for his bravery and expressing hope that his story will be a catalyst for lasting change. Activists and organizers reach out, eager to connect him with larger initiatives aimed at tackling the systemic roots of racial bias. He's invited to speak on panels, to attend town halls, and to continue sharing his story, which has become a powerful example of resilience and courage. In the midst of it all, Marcus finds a renewed sense of purpose. His life as a CIA agent has always been about protecting others, but now he feels called to protect in a new way, by advocating for the dignity and rights of all people. He begins to work closely with local leaders, speaking at schools, attending city council meetings, and becoming more involved in community activism. Each appearance, each conversation, each call for reform is a step toward healing, not just for himself, but for those who have endured similar injustices. And as he reflects on the journey, Marcus realizes that the pain of that night, as difficult as it was, has opened a door to a new mission, one that has the power to reach far beyond what he ever could have imagined. In the weeks following the incident and the powerful response it sparked, the local police department is compelled to confront the issue head-on, aware that their reputation and the trust of the community hang in the balance. Amid the public outcry and pressure from local leaders, the department initiates sweeping changes, starting with a series of mandatory training sessions focused on racial sensitivity, implicit bias, and de-escalation tactics. Officers are required to attend workshops led by professionals in social justice and community relations, many of whom come from backgrounds similar to Marcus's. The aim is to foster a deeper understanding of the community they serve and to dismantle the biases that have, for too long, defined policing strategies in this town. The changes extend beyond training. A newly appointed chief of police, chosen specifically to lead these reform efforts, issues a public apology acknowledging past failures and committing to a future that prioritizes fairness and accountability. A diversity council is formed, consisting of community leaders, civil rights advocates, and a handful of forward-thinking officers within the department. Their mission is to create an ongoing dialogue with the community, ensuring that the reforms are not just superficial measures, but foundational changes meant to foster trust. The council meets regularly to review policies, discuss incidents, and develop strategies that can prevent future instances of racial profiling. Community members are invited to participate, giving them a direct voice in shaping the very policies that impact their lives. For Marcus, witnessing this transformation brings a sense of both relief and responsibility. The reforms being implemented are a testament to the power of collective action and the undeniable impact of his decision to share his story. He's invited to sit on the Diversity Council as a representative of the community, a role he initially hesitates to accept. Though he's honored, he wonders if his involvement might feel like reliving that painful experience. But the encouragement he receives from his family, friends, and supporters drives him to accept the position. He sees it as an opportunity to not only influence the department's future, but also to lend his voice to others who have suffered in silence, those who may not have the platform to speak out, but whose experiences are equally valid. In his new role, Marcus approaches every meeting with the same dedication and integrity that he brings to his work at the CIA. His voice becomes one of reason, tempered by empathy and a desire for justice. He emphasizes the importance of transparency in every aspect of policing, encouraging officers and council members alike to examine how deeply embedded biases can influence split-second decisions and how critical it is to confront and unlearn those biases. He shares insights from his own experience, offering a perspective that bridges the gap between law enforcement and the community, underscoring the fact that justice and empathy are not mutually exclusive. As the reforms gain momentum, other departments in the state begin to take notice. Marcus's town becomes a model for progressive policing, a case study in how a community and its law enforcement can work together to build a foundation of trust. State officials reach out, requesting Marcus's input on similar initiatives in neighboring cities, hoping to replicate the success they've observed in his town. News stories circulate about the town's transformation, portraying it as a beacon of hope, a place where difficult truths are acknowledged and real progress is being made. Local and national outlets cover the town's efforts, highlighting the power of community-driven change and the crucial role Marcus played in making it happen. Within the community, the effects of the reforms are palpable. People begin to feel safer, more seen, and more respected in their interactions with the police. Reports of profiling incidents decrease, and those who once viewed law enforcement with suspicion and fear start to see officers as allies rather than adversaries. The local police department, once a source of division, begins to evolve into a force that reflects the diversity and values of the community it serves. Officers who were initially resistant to the changes begin to understand the importance of these reforms, seeing the positive effect it has on both their work and their relationship with the people they protect. The department starts to recruit officers who are not only skilled in law enforcement, but also committed to the community's values, choosing candidates who reflect the backgrounds and cultures of the town's residents. Marcus's story, once a painful reminder of bias and exclusion, transforms into a powerful narrative of healing and unity. People from all walks of life approach him to express their gratitude, to thank him for enduring that painful night and using it as a springboard for change. Families tell him how their children feel safer and more confident in their community, how they no longer fear being unfairly judged or singled out. Parents, especially those of black and brown children, share that Marcus's story has given them hope. Hope that their children will grow up in a community where they can walk freely, unburdened by the fear of unwarranted suspicion. As the department continues its journey toward reform, Marcus finds himself increasingly in demand as a speaker, an advocate, and a mentor. He speaks at universities, community centers, and public events, sharing the story of his encounter and the transformative power of resilience and advocacy. His message is clear: real change requires courage, empathy, and a commitment to action. He talks about the power of coming together, of using individual experiences to build collective understanding. And he challenges each listener to consider their role in creating a fairer, more inclusive society. His presence alone, dignified and resolute, inspires others to reflect on their own biases, to confront the systems and structures that perpetuate inequality. In time, Marcus's advocacy extends beyond his town, and he joins forces with national organizations dedicated to reforming the criminal justice system. His work gains recognition, and he's invited to speak at national conferences on race, justice, and equality. His experience, once an isolated incident, becomes part of a larger movement, one that seeks to dismantle the barriers that have divided communities and to build a justice system that serves everyone, regardless of their background or appearance. Marcus's life, once confined to the quiet, often secretive work of a CIA agent, takes on a new, more visible purpose as he dedicates himself to advancing the cause of justice on a larger scale. For Marcus, these changes are deeply personal. Though he never would have chosen to endure that painful night, he realizes that it has given him an opportunity to make a difference in ways he had never imagined. And, as he reflects on his journey, he feels a profound sense of pride, not just in the reforms that have come to pass, but in the resilience of his community and in the countless people who stood by him, supporting him, amplifying his story and demanding change. His own family, who had shared his pain, now shares his pride, seeing him as a figure of strength and compassion. His children look up to him not only as their father, but as a role model. A man who stood up for what was right, and, in doing so, made their world a little safer, a little more just. In his quiet moments, Marcus thinks about all that has unfolded since that fateful evening. He knows that the journey is far from over, that there is still much work to be done, but he feels a sense of hope that he once feared he'd lost. He's seen firsthand the power of a single story to spark change, the way one person's experience can resonate with so many, creating ripples that reach far beyond what he could have imagined. And as he looks out at his community, now bound by a shared commitment to justice and equality, he knows that together they've built something that will last, a legacy of resilience, understanding, and unity that will inspire future generations. As the dust begins to settle and the reforms take root, the community finds itself transformed, emboldened by the journey it has taken alongside Marcus. Conversations about racial profiling, previously relegated to hushed private discussions, are now open and candid. Schools introduce curriculum additions focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, giving students a framework to understand and challenge systemic biases. Local businesses pledge support to diversity initiatives, sponsoring programs aimed at community engagement and understanding. Neighborhood forums and town halls brim with residents eager to participate in building a fairer future. It's as if a door has opened that was long sealed shut, letting in fresh air, new ideas, and a renewed commitment to equality. Marcus, now recognized as a local leader, finds himself a vital part of these ongoing dialogues. Invitations come from unexpected places: city councils in neighboring towns, statewide conferences, even national justice organizations that see him as a beacon of hope and change. He continues to speak not only of the painful night that sparked this transformation, but of the broader need for empathy and vigilance against systemic issues. His talks emphasize that change is ongoing and must be nurtured by everyone, from lawmakers to citizens. With every speech, he underscores the importance of both speaking out and listening, a powerful balance that he believes is the key to lasting unity. The police department, once marked by a hardened us versus them mentality, also undergoes a cultural shift. Officer Hansen, whose actions that night set everything in motion, has completed multiple training sessions and participated in countless discussions on bias and de-escalation. Though initially resistant, he has since shown signs of introspection. In a surprising move, Hansen reaches out to Marcus, proposing a private conversation to discuss the incident and its aftermath. It's a step that Marcus knows must come not from obligation, but from a genuine desire to understand and acknowledge the harm done. The meeting between Marcus and Hansen is held in a quiet room at the community center, a neutral space that feels fitting given the weight of their conversation. The air is heavy with unspoken emotions, but Marcus sits calmly, giving Hansen space to share his perspective. Hansen begins hesitantly, acknowledging that he allowed unconscious biases to shape his actions, and admits that seeing the broader impact of his mistake has been eye-opening. He shares how, in the weeks following the incident, he questioned everything he'd taken for granted about his role as an officer, how he'd come to realize the damage his assumptions could inflict on the very people he swore to protect. Marcus listens intently, his face impassive yet compassionate. He responds thoughtfully, sharing his own experiences, not just of that night, but of countless moments over the years where he's felt the weight of society's judgments. He speaks about the cumulative impact of such encounters and how, even as a highly trained CIA agent, he still cannot escape being seen through a lens of suspicion. The conversation is raw, vulnerable, and for both men, transformative. Hansen leaves with a deeper understanding, having taken an important step towards self-awareness and reconciliation. Marcus, too, feels a sense of closure, not because one conversation can erase the harm, but because it's a start, a small but meaningful gesture toward accountability. As the months pass, changes ripple outward from this small community. State legislators, inspired by Marcus's story and the community's response, draft bills focused on police reform, advocating for more comprehensive training and oversight measures across departments. In a landmark moment, Marcus is invited to testify before the state legislature, where he shares not only his story, but also his vision for a justice system rooted in equality and respect. His words resonate deeply with lawmakers, some of whom have only begun to grasp the breadth of systemic issues within their own districts. Through his advocacy, Marcus becomes a key player in shaping policy that reflects a commitment to justice, dignity, and transparency. The impact extends beyond the realm of law enforcement. Community organizations see a surge in interest, with more residents participating in volunteer efforts and civic engagement initiatives. Programs aimed at providing mentorship and resources to young people of color flourish, thanks in part to partnerships Marcus helps establish with local businesses and non-profits. His advocacy work serves as a bridge, connecting organizations that share a common vision for a stronger, more unified community. For Marcus, these tangible outcomes represent a powerful shift. Not only has his community rallied to address racial bias within law enforcement, but it has embraced a broader mission to uplift and empower all of its residents. In his personal life, Marcus feels the shift as well. His children, now old enough to understand more of what happened, look up to him with pride, inspired by his resilience and the strength of his convictions. They see firsthand the impact of standing up for what's right, a lesson that transcends any formal education. Marcus and his wife, Sarah, talk openly with their children about the importance of empathy, justice, and the courage to speak out. Their family becomes a living example of resilience and advocacy, showing that even the most painful experiences can lead to growth and positive change. The community as a whole becomes a symbol of resilience, often cited in broader conversations about racial justice and police reform. Journalists and activists visit the town, writing articles and producing documentaries that highlight how Marcus's story sparked a transformation that many once thought impossible. The narrative moves from a single act of injustice to a collective response, a story of a community that chose to confront its biases and build something better. And Marcus, though never seeking the spotlight, finds himself at the heart of a movement. His actions a reminder that real change begins with ordinary people willing to stand up for what's right. Reflecting on the journey, Marcus realizes that while the incident at the grocery store was painful, it has led to something profoundly meaningful. His experience became a catalyst not only for change, but also for healing and understanding. His town, once divided by unspoken biases, has come together with a shared purpose. People of all backgrounds now work side by side, creating a community where respect, empathy, and justice are more than just ideals. They are practices woven into the very fabric of daily life. In moments of quiet, Marcus contemplates the path forward. He knows that the work is never truly done, that there will always be challenges and setbacks, but he is filled with hope. His story, once a painful reminder of discrimination, has become a testament to the power of resilience and the potential for change. And as he continues his work, both in his town and beyond, he remains committed to the values that guided him through that difficult night: integrity, justice, and the belief that every person deserves to be treated with respect. Ultimately, Marcus's journey illustrates that even in the face of adversity, individuals and communities alike can rise, transforming pain into progress and division into unity. His story, now shared widely, serves as a beacon, a reminder of the enduring power of one voice to inspire many and the capacity of a single act of courage to ignite lasting change. And as the community continues to evolve, Marcus stands as a symbol of hope and justice, proof that real transformation is possible, one step at a time, one story at a time.